Okay. Great. Good morning, everyone. It is 11:07 for our iLearn Saturday training your team in M&E, building organizational capacity with Cassange Bitère. If you have any questions after this session, you could always send us an email to ask your question, or you could always reach out to Cassange with whatever question you have. Cassange, all yours. And no camera for today. You know, trying to stay pretty.
Thank you, Libby. Good morning, everyone. As Libby said, my name is Cassange. I am a development practitioner with expertise in monitoring and evaluation. I think by this time, most of our attendees, they know me by name now and by profession as well. So I'm going to try to stay brief. So today, the training is going to be about building organizational capacity for your monitoring team. We have an agenda. It appears to be a long agenda, but I promise it's going to be a pretty short session. So first, the fact that we are doing something that is related to monitoring and evaluation, I'm going to briefly talk about what monitoring and evaluation is. We're going to discuss what is organizational capacity building and what it means in M&E as well, and its importance, and some common bad practices in M&E that also affects capacity building. We will talk about the adoption of the culture for monitoring and evaluation, and also how to incorporate capacity building in monitoring and evaluation. We will discuss the roles of leadership and the general teams, some sustainability plan, how to measure impacts of capacity building, and some key indicators and evaluation methods that are suggested people can use to actually measure the impacts of capacity building. And then at the very end, we'll have a Q&A session. So for objectives today, I'm hoping after this session, participants will be able to explain the key components of organizational capacity building and monitoring evaluation. And also they will be able to identify some indicators and methods to measure the impact of capacity building efforts. And for our first part of this presentation today, I will briefly talk about monitoring and evaluation. So in a way, monitoring and evaluation is a process that actually we use to track progress, to measure results and understand how programs or also projects are performing. This is a system that also helps organizations to see if their activities are reaching the intended outcomes and where they can make some adjustments if needed. And something I really wanted to emphasize here is that monitoring and evaluation is not just a donor requirement, because too often organizations really treat it as something they do because they have to do it. So one thing that is important is like, I don't want you to see monitoring and evaluation as something you have to, just check the box or meet some reporting obligations. But what it really is like it's a leadership tool. It helps organizations or leaders or team to make some type of informed decisions, to improve their strategies, to improve organizational performance as well. So when a team or organization or even leaders they value monitoring and evaluation, it helps to shift the culture of the organization or the team. It becomes more like it becomes less about like compliance to donors and more about the learning process. And also monitoring and evaluation is the when it's done like effectively, it transforms how team works. So instead of only doing projects and producing certain type of reports, the team or the organization they start to learn through what they are doing. So they begin to ask certain questions like what's working or what's not working, and how can we adapt to achieve like better results. So this shift from doing to like learning is what really helps organizations to go stronger, to be more adaptive and effective over time as well. So when we talk about organizational capacity building, so what does it mean exactly? So when we talk about that, what we're referring to is like a continuous process of like reinforcing how organization works. It's not just like a one-time training or a one-time activity, but an ongoing process to make sure systems and people and also structures are working together effectively to improve the performance and maintain sustainability. Organizational capacity building also focuses on things like leadership, governance, planning, and also accountability. So when these areas are connected and they are also strong, teams or even organizations are better equipped to deliver quality programs and to respond to change as well. So capacity building also involves putting in place some internal systems that support program implementation and learning. For example, clear data systems or communication channels and certain feedback loops. These things also help the organizations to improve and to make better decisions in the future. Another important part is like promoting the culture of continuous learning or continuous improvement and also evidence-based decision making. This also means using, data and some type of reflection to guide strategies rather than kind of like relying on some type of intuition or assumptions or even other external pressure as well. So when all these elements they come together, the systems become strong, people or staff are more skilled, and there's like a better leadership and a better culture of learning within the organization, and you can see like better result coming for your project or your program. So to kind of summarize the previous slide, organizational capacity is really about like the combination of like systems that support performance, the people with the right skills, the culture that values evidence, and the resources that sustain learning. So when all these pieces work together or they are in combination, the organization doesn't just work, it also grows and thrives for the best. So now I'm going to talk briefly about like what capacity building is within monitoring and evaluation. So it's it's not just about like conducting some trainings or some workshops. It's also about like, improving the entire system that supports monitoring and evaluation within an organization. And it also focuses on three main areas of capital. First, we have the human capital, which means developing like staff knowledge, technical skills, and evaluative thinking through ongoing training, mentorship, and also practice. The second is social capital, which is about building trust and collaboration among teams. So when people communicate and share learning openly within the organization or within the team as well, it creates a stronger foundation for teamwork and collective problem solving. And the third one is organizational capital, which focuses on improving systems, policies, and data processes, while also building a culture that values evidence and accountability. So when all these three capitals are together, they create an environment where motivation, capacity, and opportunity reinforce each other and leading to sustainable and effective monitoring and evaluation performance. In terms of importance, why it is important to build the capacity in monitoring and evaluation. So one of the reasons why it's important is because it directly influences how well your organization performs, and it also helps you to sustain impact. So developing technical competence ensures that your staff have like the confidence and skills to generate reliable data and make informed decisions. It also builds a culture of like, ongoing learning where teams stay curious, open to feedback, and ready to adapt as context and priorities are changing. So beyond like just individual skills, capacity building helps to improve the overall organizational performance. It also helps to create like a system that support accountability, data quality, and smarter program adjustment. And finally, it also fosters like a shared ownership. So when everyone understands that value of monitoring and evaluation, it will encourage more collaboration, more transparency, and a shared responsibility for the results. And in terms of like bad practice, that I've experienced a lot of, I've seen a lot of like bad practice in monitoring and evaluation. And I think this is a common problem that I've seen in many organizations because they are treating monitoring and evaluation as like an afterthought. So it's often added like at the end of the project rather than being built in from the very start. So when that happens, evaluation kind of like loses its purpose of like learning, like because it's a learning tool, it loses its purpose as a learning tool and becomes more like a reporting exercise. And another bad practice is when monitoring and evaluation focuses mainly on satisfying donors or certain stakeholders or partners instead of like guiding internal decision making. So the result is that you're going to be collecting like the data that is going to be collected will not be really used to improve strategy or program design, but just to satisfy the requirement that you have. And because of that, certain lessons that are learned will be rarely or maybe not internalized at all. So you're not going to design based on evidence, or you're not going to improve program based on evidence. And your organization or your team will miss on the opportunity to reflect, to adjust, and to grow from experience. So the takeaway here is like that M&E should be integrated from the very beginning and used as like a management or a learning process, not just like a compliance requirement. I know it's sometimes required to submit some reports to donors, to any like funders that you may have. But even though you have these requirements, you should also build in the practice of monitoring and evaluation from the start and improve your project with that system built in your project as well. In terms of adopting like a culture for monitoring and evaluation, it also means like moving beyond like seeing monitoring and evaluation as just a task or requirement. Just as I said earlier, it should become part of or an integral part of your team or your organization. Like it should become like how you work every day. Because true capacity building happens when M&E is sort of like integrated into the daily rhythm of your work. So when data and reflection are naturally built into the team practice or your organization practice, and not as like something that is done to report to a donor at the end, it gives more purpose to your project. And one good sign of this is when one good sign to kind of like adopt like a culture of M&E is like when you promote like data review within management meetings. So leaders and teams will really like look at the data, discuss what it means, and they decide based on the data that they have in hand. It's also when program teams or organizations use the findings from monitoring and evaluation to refine their approaches or their strategy. So they adjust their strategies based on like the evidence that they have, rather than waiting for like an external evaluation to be done to tell them what went wrong. So they actually, before they have the result of the final evaluation, they know exactly what was not working and adjust in the middle of the way. And the final one is like leadership kind of sets the tone by kind of like modeling a curiosity and continuous improvement. So when leaders ask questions, when they show interest in results, and they use the evidence in their decisions, it encourages everyone within the team or within the organization to do the same thing. And that's how M&E becomes a culture in the organization or within the organization. So how do we actually start to incorporate capacity building into our work? So it starts with being first intentional and strategic rather than like treating it as like a one-time activity or just like a one-time workshop. So first, you need to start with evidence. And with that, you need to design, before you design like any type of intervention, actually, you take the time to understand what capacities already exist there, where the gaps are, and what the organization truly needs. So that ensures your efforts are focused on like relevant gaps and relevant limitation of the organization of your team. And next is that you get everyone engaged because capacity building works best when staff, partners, and all stakeholders from the project or the organization are involved in it. It's not just about training individuals, but like creating a shared ownership and learning together. And the third one is to adapt to the context that you're working in. So there is that thing we always say, there is no one size fits all approach or model. So what works within one organization or one team within that organization may not work with another team. So you need to tailor your approach to kind of like local realities, available resources, and specific goals of the team or the organization as well. And also you need to promote like continuous learning actually. So by this, what you have to do is to encourage the teams to keep improving and adapting to new tools and technologies. For example, now there's like a lot of monitoring and evaluation tools or data analysis tools that are implementing AI components. So maybe you should try to, adapt to these new technologies and new tools to get better and faster analysis to make rapid decisions. And that also means that capacity building should be seen as like an ongoing journey and not like one single part or one single event that happened within the course of the project or the program. And finally, you need to certainly monitor and evaluate as well because you need to track your progress. You need to learn from your results, and you need to use this learning to improve the future capacity building efforts as well. And that's how this type of improvement they become like more sustainable. So in terms of roles of leadership and general team, to kind of build a strong monitoring and evaluation system, you need the participation of both teams. When I say leadership, teams like the upper management. So for leadership, the main role would be to kind of like set the tone. So leaders must like, champion like the use of like evidence when making decision and show that data matters a lot. So when staff kind of like see leaders asking for data or referring to findings in meetings, it kind of reinforces that monitoring evaluation is valuable. So leaders also need to create that safe space for open discussion, especially when the data reveals challenges or negative results. This kind of helps to shift the mindset from like blaming a party or blaming a team member to just learn together. And lastly, for leadership, they should allocate time and resources for staff to learn and to follow up on evaluation recommendation as well. But for general teams, monitoring and evaluation should be seen as like a shared responsibility for them, not just like as a job of like the monitoring evaluation department. So the general teams, they need to play their essential part or the essential role by like documenting what they are learning, reflecting on challenges and providing feedback that can improve the program. So also there's like the engagement of like internal peer learning, which is really powerful because when team actually shares like the lessons that they've learned from their own experience, others can actually apply those insights to their work and make it better. And in terms of sustainability, the best way to kind of like make it more sustainable is like don't see monitoring and evaluation capacity as like the number of reports that you are producing, but see it as like the number of decisions that are influenced by data actually or by findings. So by this, what I mean is like sustaining the capacity building means like creating the habits of like keep learning more active, which is done by like monthly data review or like learning meetings within the different departments of the organization. It is also done by like using the findings in strategic planning and even some proposals as well, because organizations are writing proposals all the time to get more funding. So you can use the findings of a previous project that you've done, what you've learned from it, to inform your current proposal. And also one important part is when the teams document and share how they have adapted based on evidence. This really promotes the adaptation, like the adaptation, not adaptation, sorry, not the adaptation, which may result in more like sustainable project or more sustainable impact. But at the same time, if you want your capacity building efforts to be more sustainable, you also need to measure it. So measuring the capacity building efforts also means like to it also kind of like helps the organization to determine like if investments in monitoring evaluation skills and system monitoring evaluation system, if they lead to like meaningful improvements. So the organization should kind of measure both the individual and the institutional progress to kind of demonstrate like the results and also promote accountability. But the main purpose of measuring impact is also to assess how capacity building activities are actually improving monitoring and evaluation performance, and also the organizational learning. So they do this by like identifying where continuous support is needed, and also provide clear evidence of value to management or to donors or funders, and also to other stakeholders or partners that are part of the project or the organization as well. So for this, there are like four key areas to focus on when measuring the impact capacity building. We have first knowledge and skills gain. This is where you're going to assess how staff are improving, um, how their technical skills are being improved, or their analytical abilities as well. And we do have improvements in data quality and reporting. So it's like whether the information that you're collecting is more accurate and useful. And we do have enhanced program decision making and results. This is how like to assess like how evidence is used and to kind of like inform action or future programs as well. And there is institutional learning and adaptation. This is how the organization integrates new practices and kind of like sustains these practices over time. So by tracking these areas, organizations can actually show not just activity, but the real progress that are happening. And the very last slide I have here, there are like some few indicators that you can use to actually track the capacity building efforts within your organization. So we have like these few example of indicators you can also use to track and to kind of like measure the capacity building progress. You might look at like skill growth, like improvement in staff ability to use monitoring and evaluation tools and analyze data. Job performance is another one that you can use, whether your staff is like applying evidence for more effective work, I would say. You can also track project results and stakeholder confidence and data quality and timeliness as like a sign that capacity building is having an impact. And in terms of like to measure these indicators, you can use certain type of like methods or evaluation methods that are like pre and post test assessments. I remember I had a training with Supply NGO where I discussed what pre and post test assessment is as well. You can do feedback surveys, you can do performance reviews, and you can even do case studies as well. These show real changes linked to like training or like mentorship. So these methods really help you to kind of like capture both the technical progress and the organizational learning that kind of come with the capacity building efforts. And I think this was the last slide that I had, and now the floor is open for discussion. Maybe over to you.
Thank you for sharing this. I think the only question that I really have is how can smaller nonprofits, especially within our community, use this resource to help their teams? It's like you did
Like
have a slide that included the leadership side of
Mhm.
M&E, as well as the general team. Voila.
Yeah, this. So when you're talking about like a small organization, do you mean a small organization with like two staff only, or is that what you mean?
Practically, because the trend that we're seeing within the you could say Haitian-led nonprofits that doesn't necessarily have a huge budget to work with or doesn't have outside funding and using internal funding also, like their team is usually either one person wearing multiple hats or it could be purely volunteer based where it's like 10 people or whatnot. It's just a matter of they don't necessarily have uh, an in-person office. They purely operate virtually. And at the same time, those that do have a physical location, but the staff is very scarce. So how would they implement something like this within their team?
The way, because I'm currently working with a consulting firm that is pretty small and the work setting is primarily remote. So the way we try to promote this is by like having regular meeting with the team and understand exactly what need we have. For example, I think we kind of have a lack in terms of developing budget within the organization. And this is something that is really important for us as a consulting firm because, when you're submitting a proposal, they also need to see a budget as well as part of this proposal. So we actually discuss amongst us and see kind of like gather information about our previous experience, if we have experience working in budget previously or some type of grant management. We discussed that, we understand the lack that we had, and then we look for more opportunities, either free opportunities online where we took like webinar around like budgeting, how to budget within an organization, how to budget within non-profit for non-profit. We also took part of like paid workshops at Emory as well that that help us to kind of like fulfill that gap that we have within the organization. And the good thing after we've done that is that we build so much skills in grant development and budgeting as well. We are even able to develop a grant course for a university in the future. And we do have a team now that is working in budget that is like specifically working for budgeting when we are writing proposal. So I think regular meeting, regular discussions are a way for small companies or small organizations to kind of like understand exactly what they lack and find pathways, even if they cannot afford to pay. Sometimes they are like free webinars online, you can assist and you use your work hours to do that. And this can actually help you to improve until you can be more sustainable in the future to kind of like, take advantage of like paid workshop or paid live sessions where you can actually reinforce these skills that you already start building.
No, thank you for that. And also like to add on, not necessarily add on, but the last question, I promise, last question is what are some of the most common pitfalls you could say organizations, whether small or big, faces when trying to build an M&E capacity and how do they or how can they avoid them?
So in my experience, the common pitfall is like based on the background of the person you're working with. For example, I do have but I'm a development practitioner, so I see monitoring and evaluation in a way that a public health professional would see it. This is something that I've been experiencing for the last 2 years, I would say. The way I talk about monitoring and evaluation, public health professionals talk about it differently. They don't see it as like an ongoing process, especially for monitoring, which is really important. They just see the reach in terms of like indicators that can give them numbers and then just provide a report about that. And then this is why it's important to kind of like complement this slack that you have as like a public health professional with someone else that can actually help you build that monitoring part that you don't have. And currently, my supervisor, who's also a public health professional, she's taught on evaluation. And the reason why we work best together is because I'm really good at like the monitoring part.
Mm,
And the way when we are like helping an organization, for example, right now we are helping Stanford to develop a logic model and develop their evaluation plan. Initially, that was the plan to develop an evaluation plan for them. And as we were developing the evaluation plan, the questions and the indicators that we were creating, I was like, I don't think we can actually track this for just an evaluation. We need a monitoring system to do so. And that's when they realized, oh, we never heard about monitoring systems. So how can we do that? And then we started to develop the monitoring system as well, which now they find really important and crucial to complement their evaluation part. So I would say most of the time it's like combine the skills that you have with someone else that has another skills that can actually complete um, the lack that you're like trying to fulfill within your organization. If that makes sense.
No, it kind of makes sense, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. How I'm understanding it is that like within monitoring and evaluation, not everyone have the same experience or background.
Mhm.
Where my understanding of M&E could be very much different from your understanding of M&E and
Okay.
how we implement them. So it's
Mhm.
always useful and helpful to have someone from different background to plug in what is missing
Exactly. Yeah.
so, because like like for me with M&E, I would like put in place a lot of project management tools, whereas other
Mhm.
people would not think of that. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
so th that's how I understood it, and ultimately for any organization is just allowing team members to have a say, basically. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, there
being
is that too.
yeah.
And most of the time, for me as well as a monitoring and evaluation professional, I don't really have the skills in quantitative data analysis. I can do like a descriptive analysis for quantitative data, but
Hmm.
I don't have the skills to kind of go like deeper into a quantitative data to do the analysis. And I know that I have this lack. So we were recently trying to hire interns for our project. And one of the things that I was looking for is someone that can help us with quantitative data analysis. This is how you actually help to kind of like reinforce your team by looking for others that have the skills that you don't have that can help you complement that as well.
That's great though.
Yeah.
Seriously, thank you. I think obviously this was my last question. I wanted to thank you for at least, staying with us with monitoring evaluation for this year and being that like this is your last session for 2025 and basically we'll come back on 2026. Again, wanted to thank you.
Definitely.
And for anyone who's watching, there's past session that Cassange have led. Always go back to review those sessions. If you have any questions, you can always email us or you can email Cassange to basically help you with your initiative in monitoring and evaluation. And come next year, we'll have new sessions with Cassange. We do have 3 sessions for the rest of the year focused on grant making or you could say fundraising, which I know within the Haitian community, we need that. So
Yeah.
if you have not registered yet, this is your time to obviously registered and don't miss out. Cassange, did you have any last words?
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity this year to share my knowledge and skills, also experience with a broader audience. I'm thinking by next year we can come up like with other agenda to improve or to help to support your audience actually to become like a better version of themselves. So yeah, I was excited to facilitate this training this year, and I'm hoping to come back next year again.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And after this session, obviously, we're going to send out the recording as well as the presentation for reviewing. And yeah, if you have any feedback, always send us an email and or comment under the YouTube comment section. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, see you later, Cassange.
See you later.
Bye.